All right, we are going to start over, so I apologize. We are calling to order the meeting of the House Legislative and Congressional Reapportionment Committee meeting. Thank you all for being here. As I stated a little earlier, we understand that the Senate committee passed out the congressional map bill. So we are going to take some time and see what they send over. I am going to be canceling tomorrow's committee meeting, and I have replaced it with a Saturday committee meeting. It will begin at 9 a.m. and we will take public commentary at that meeting virtually. We will also have members who will probably be participating in that meeting virtually, since many of our members live hundreds of miles away. That will make it possible for them to participate. So mark your calendars to take tomorrow off and put a new hearing on for Saturday. All right, we have some members of the public signed up here. We also have one of our representatives, Representative Erica Thomas. So I am going to ask that she speak first, and then we will take everyone in the order in which you signed up.
Thank you, Chairwoman. My name is Representative Erica Thomas, and currently I represent Austell, Powder Springs, Mableton, and a little bit of Smyrna. Today, I am here to speak on behalf of my constituents. I've had a number of constituents to reach out to me about this current map that we have that is proposed, this congressional map. And it is very disheartening because with this proposed congressional district map, the citizens of Austell and Powder Springs would currently be in Congressional District 14, which is Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is not what the citizens of my district deserve. No matter how Austell voters vote, even if 100% of them come out to vote, they will never get the representation that they vote for. They have been paired with a district that does not look like them or share the values of them. I have questions for the committee, and I believe at the end we can get those questions in, but I just want to put them out here. Why was Cobb County split to add a large population of people of color to Congressional District 14? What is the redistricting criteria that justifies this sort of split? Because if the answer is that the principle of one person, one vote, then why not draw from counties that are more demographically similar and would lead to a more compact district, such as Fannin, Gilmer, Pickens, or Bartow counties? Why split and dilute the voting power of people of color in West Cobb and put them in a district that is so clearly where they don't belong? Congressional District 2, Congressional District 4, Congressional District 5, and Congressional District 13 were designated as voting rights act districts. And Congressional District 7 was designated as a minority opportunity district by the majority party. Chairman Kennedy said this yesterday. And once again, we're left with more questions than answers. What analyst would confirm that the appropriate number of Black people and other people of color were placed into these districts? And this is in fact in compliance with the Voting Rights Act and the US Constitution. I know that many of my constituents were shocked by the changes to the district, to our district. And unfortunately, too many were unable to make it to this hearing today. Now, some of them are still on their way. But this process has lacked public accountability and transparency. And you may say that it has this, But with a map that was put out yesterday, and now we have constituents coming from West and South Cobb, rushing here, leaving work to get here to be able to testify. And I appreciate you putting it on Saturday as well. But at the end of the day, they don't want to be in Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. They don't want it. They would like a representative that looks like them, or even a representative that represents the values that my district has. And if you put Austell and Powder Springs in Congressional District 14, then you are doing a disservice to people that look just like me. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Thomas. You have a question. Chairman Setzler.
Thank you, Representative Thomas. I want to ask you, I don't know that I'm necessarily following your thinking about representation and who can represent whom. Would you expect, I mean, and you brought some passion, and you know, I think you held back. You certainly didn't show outrage, but you certainly showed a level of deep passion and profound opposition. Would you, Representative Green, who I don't know very well, I've met her before, as most of us have, represents Northeast Georgia. If a district were drawn where you were representing Paulding County or Polk County yourself as their state representative, would you think it appropriate that they be equally as outraged as you are that you're representing them? Or do you think you could represent them credibly because you care about them as people and as a representative?
So it's crazy that you say that, because I wanted to be able to bring this map down here so I could show you exactly what I mean by this. But if you don't mind, can I step up here just for a second?
Yes, Ms. Hart.
So
actually, we need to get you on a microphone.
I just wanted to show the map.
Maybe Molly can move the map down to you.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
And again, Representative Thomas says she's bringing the map. The nature of the question is, do you feel yourself as an elected official able to credibly represent people in Paulding and Polk counties, or would you say that your representation of them would be equally troubling as the representation you framed here for us?
So my answer to that question is looking at this map right here. I believe that the people in my constituency were drawn into a map that is not representation of the rest of this map. Okay, and that's where I'm at. This, where we used to be, if you look at this map, where we used to be, we were in Mableton with a district leader that represented Mableton, that represented the rest of unincorporated Austell, that represented the rest of parts of even down here into Douglas and into, can't really see the map, but you can see what I'm saying. The point is that at the end of the day, why are we moving people out of a district that looks like them? That is what I am saying. At the end of the day, the issues that a representative is representing in these counties are not the same issues that a representative that would be representing the current district that I am in right now. And that's the answer to the question.
So I presume you're saying that you would not be able to represent people.
Don't presume anything. It's exactly what I said is what I'm going to say to answer that question.
Just as you feel like you represent those folks credibly, I want to unpack for the committee, and I'm not going to get ugly with you, but I think just for purposes of substance, you're contending that a United States congressperson can't represent your people credibly. Are you saying that you couldn't represent the people
that is not what I'm saying? And my answer to that question is, again, that I'm not going to go back and forth with you, but what I will say is at the end of the day, we are put into a district that does not represent the issues, land issues, agricultural issues, all of the issues that we may have are not some of the issues, the majority of the issues that this congressional district looks like. And that's the facts.
All right, thank you, Chairman Setzler. We also have a question from Representative Alexander.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mine is really not a question, but my colleague is talking about Paulding County, and just to be exact, I represent Paulding County. I represent District 66, which is Paulding County and Douglas County. The people in Paulding County deserve to have representation. However, with the House map, I am now drawn out of Paulding County. So when you talk about Paulding County, yeah, they deserve to have people that represent them and represent that district, but it just so happened I am that representative that represent District 66 in Paulding County. However, I am drawn out of the district now and only have Douglas County. That's just my comment.
And before I sit down, I want to say this, is that, again, to Representative Alexander's point, at the end of the day, when it comes to 2023, that district where majority of Austell, where she has that district, is will be Representative Wilkinson's district. But that is not the point. I feel like you still have to speak out for the people and for the people that can't be here today, that are on their way. And I just want to end with the point of, when we think about the issues, when we think about what is going on in Congress, we have to make sure that the voters are able to pick their representation, and representatives are not able to pick their voters. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Thomas. All right, we're going to move to the sign-up list now. And just for clarification, I'm not sure that I said this the second time. We are considering public commentary on House Bill 2EX and House Bill 5EX. Okay, first up, we have Mr. Ken Lawler, and he will be followed by Karen Davenport.
Thank you, Chairman Rich and members of the committee. I spoke yesterday, and I will finish my comments from yesterday, give you kind of a little bit of an update on some information. Yesterday, I spoke about our analysis of the two maps. I think I talked about both of them, the 5EX and the 2EX, if I got the numbers right. Spoke about both of those. And in my remarks yesterday, I mentioned that our overall perception here is that our benchmarks all say that the partisan gap in Georgia has narrowed. And by narrowing, that means we've arrived at this current delegation of 8 Republicans, 6 Democrats in our congressional delegation. And our benchmarks show that that, in fact, is the fairest model for a map across the state of Georgia for the congressional districts. Even though we're a 50-50 state, we don't believe the districts should be 7 and 7 as proposed by the Democratic caucus map. We think 8-6 is the single best score. So both maps are really off by 1, is what I said yesterday. The other point I made yesterday was about some of the changes that are going on in the two districts, in the two maps. We've done some initial analysis overnight on the joint committee proposed map. And what we were looking at was trying to understand why are people being moved across many of the districts? We know that you have a big job to do as far as equalizing the population. And the analogy that one of our volunteers came up with, which I think is pretty appropriate, is you think about it as you have a bunch of dough that you're trying to lay out into a flat pie crust, and you've got lumps in the dough. So you have to kind of spread it around. You can't just isolate one district. You have to look at the totality of the map. But still, you can look and see where are most of the changes occurring, and is there justification for those changes? The biggest single change across all the districts in the joint committee map is the 6th. Turns out that in the 6th district, which was only about 650 people overpopulated, that a full over 45% of the district, or the people and the voters in that district, were moved out. Now, you can't fix it by just moving 650 people. You're going to have to move more. But I have a hard time buying the idea that you're maintaining the core of that district when almost half of it is being moved out, when only a tiny percentage needed to be moved to equalize the population. The same thing is true of the 7th district. In the 7th district, it was overpopulated by 10% of the original population. I think it was the largest overpopulated district, if I'm not mistaken, by 94,000 people. So about 10% had to be moved. How many were moved? Well, 49%. So it's in excess, 39% of the people are being moved out of District 7 to accommodate the change. There's other districts that have a large number of people as well, but those two districts, when you look at a picture, which I drew, they really stick out as being really over-targeted for change in our view. Now, on the HB 5BX map, we have the same situation with the 10th district, where the 10th district has been basically repurposed from where it was in Eastern Georgia over to Metro Atlanta. So you could consider that 100% of the people in that district that live there today have been essentially uprooted. You could say the word uprooted or moved out of that district. So we are not fans of either of these approaches to drawing a fair map for two reasons. One is that we think the right balance is an 8-6 balance, not a 9-5, not a 7-7. And they are both achieving those two objectives of, getting an extra district for one party over the other by disrupting these districts, the 6th and the 7th in the committee map and the 10th in the caucus map. Now, one thing I did not get to say yesterday is that we know this can be done better. And how do we know? Well, I have a little present for the committee, and the present is this. We had some citizens go draw some maps. We've had more time to work on the congressional maps because we had early drafts. So it turns out that our friends at Princeton, again, I know people don't like that university, but our friends at Princeton ran a mapping contest across the whole country. They didn't do it for Georgia. They did it elsewhere, and they found many good maps from other states. But what they did was they recruited a core of good map drawers, citizen map drawers, and they made these people available. So I asked them, I said, could you please draw me some districts and maps for Georgia, for the congressional district that fit these fair benchmarks? And lo and behold, they discovered that it's quite possible to draw a fair map. So 5 maps were produced. And by the way, the links to these maps have been entered into the committee's, the portal, the online portal. There's a comment I put in there yesterday morning, which contains the links to these 5 maps. All of these maps had an 8-6 partisan balance. They had 2 to 5 competitive districts. Remember that yesterday we saw that the committee map has no competitive districts. The caucus map, I'll refer to the Democratic caucus. The caucus map only has 1. These have between 2 and 5, so we can have more competitive districts, which, other things being equal, competition is good. It breeds excellence. They had 5 to 6 minority majority districts, which is at least the same number as we had from the other maps. And then finally, they did it by splitting fewer counties. These maps only split 9 to 15 counties, whereas the maps under consideration split either 15 or 18. So what we know from this experiment is that it's possible to draw a fair map. Citizens can do it. What I'm asking the committee to do is to consider brokering a compromise. Take some of these things into account. You've got 2 maps that are each tilted 1 district too far. Come up with a compromise and use those citizens maps, if you like, to help guide that compromise. But let's find a compromise that achieves a fair partisan balance, because we know it's possible. Citizens can do it. I'm convinced the committee can do it. Am I time up, or am I?
If you have something else to add, you can go ahead and add it.
I'll just add one other comment, and that's sort of
I appreciate the
Yeah.
factual and policy-based
Yeah,
testimony that you're giving.
right.
So-
Thank you.
Mhm.
So I want to step back and just say a lot of the work that we do in Fair Districts, Georgia, and that our partners at Princeton do is all about trying to achieve partisan fairness. That's what we're advocating for, is partisan fairness. The friction that we have, or let me just say the disconnect that we have, and the public, I think, has, between the way the committees in this legislature do this and what the public is asking for, is the committee's guidelines don't discuss partisan fairness. They discuss county splits. They have all the important aspects of Voting Rights Act compliance, equal population, but the guidelines do not address partisan fairness. They just don't deal with it, right? It's missing in our view. It should be higher in the list than county splits, in our view. So it's a missing element, and that's why a lot of our advocacy is about trying to achieve that. And yet the issue is that you say the maps are fair according to the guidelines that you wrote. Well, they may be fair according to the guidelines that you wrote, but they're missing an important fact. The people of Georgia want a map that's fair. Now, there's help on the way, and I'll just give you a little heads up. And the heads up is that you know that the Freedom to Vote Act is pending in the Congress right now. It's not obviously near passage, but if that were to pass, the Freedom to Vote Act has a couple of really important provisions that would affect the maps as being proposed, especially the committee map. The provisions are, number one, it has a ban on partisan gerrymandering, and they have tests written into the draft of the legislation that describes how you would determine whether you partisan gerrymandered or not. The second thing that the Freedom to Vote Act has is a specific provision that extends minority rights. It says that a district that has less than 50% minority population should still be protected. So it adds a protection for that. What I'll tell you is that I'm not a lawyer, okay, but I can tell you by looking at the act and looking at the changes to the 6th district, it would be an excellent test case. So thank me later if you get a notice on this, but I think that what the changes in this map that are targeted at this, I should say, the changes in HB2 EX that are targeted by the committee clearly look to me like they would be a test case under the Freedom to Vote Act were it to pass. And I'll stop and take any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lawler. You do have one question, Chairman Setzler.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just wanted to say for the purpose of the public that's listening, isn't it true the Freedom of Vote Act in Congress is a single party project? There's not broad bipartisan support for that. And that is the test case by which you would evaluate these maps. Is you're saying these maps that are being proposed as good balanced maps would meet the test case, would meet the test condition of this federal bill that's being pushed by only the Democratic Party. Is that not true?
It's certainly being pushed by the Democratic Party. I know they hope to. I can't speak to what our senator is doing. As you know, Senator Warnock's very much behind this. Can't speak to how he's going to get Republican support for that. But at the end of the day, I look at the act and say it's pretty nonpartisan in terms of it's trying to achieve a standard. It's trying to codify into law standards for fairness, communities of interest, which we don't have codified into law today.
Right. And it's, as I think the public recognizes, the control of the United States House is in the hands of the Democratic Party. The control of the Senate, though narrow, is still has a Democrat majority. And the bill you're talking about, by which you're suggesting we measure our maps.
Well, not yet, but we will.
But again, this fairness framework you're talking about.
Yes.
Is a map that is so partisan in nature, there's no bipartisan support. In fact, it can't even get through a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate because it's so partisan. So I would just, for the public, wanted to highlight the test he's talking about is such a partisan Democrat test, it can't pass the Democrat House or Democrat Senate. So again, with all due respect, I just want to make
Yeah,
it very
that would be
clear.
your characterization, and I would say we'll see what the Congress does. We can't speculate on the outcome, and I agree with you. I understand the point.
But I think it's just very, as a matter of fact,
Yeah.
it is a single party only bill that can't pass a single party Congress because of its where it is on the spectrum as opposed to a balanced approach.
Okay, I understood your point. Anything else?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chairman Setzler and Mr. Lawler. I do not see any other questions, so we can move on to our next speaker, Ms. Karen Davenport, who will be followed by Leroy Hutchins.
Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak. My name is Karen Davenport, and I am a member of Fair Districts, Georgia. But today I'm speaking to you as a citizen who lives in Decatur. I want to encourage this committee to look again at the draft maps and carefully reevaluate them to address the following points. One, to look at adjusting the maps so that districts 6 and 10 are not changed so much. These changes are unnecessary to make the maps fair. Number 2, look at the maps and create additional competitive districts. And number 3, adjust the joint committee maps so that they are not short on minority district representation. On this building, particularly as I walked here today, there are several plaques that communicate that the mission of the legislators is to use wisdom, fairness, and justice. I want to encourage this committee to consider these goals and really improve the current draft maps to match the current population of Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Davenport. Next, we have Leroy Hutchins. Okay, we'll come back to him then. Next, we have Giovanni Serrano, followed by Ron Davis.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Giovanni Serrano. I am a community organizer with Clear Action Network. We focus on mobilizing the Latinx vote throughout the entire state of Georgia in previous elections. And and we're nonpartisan when it comes to mobilizing the vote. And I also want to thank every member of this committee for taking all the time, to go through this process of redistricting. We know for us, it's the first time that we get into this process, and we know how hard it is, and following all the different guidelines and everything. So we appreciate the hard work that you guys have put forward to it. But we would not accept anything less than a fair map. In the 2020 elections, Georgia became a purple state, and it should be reflected in the new maps. Right now, we have two comparative visions for Georgia. One that 6-5 for districts that represent the fast-changing demographics in our state, and one that is fighting to stay in power without considering the voice of all Georgians. People of color made up Georgia's growth of more than 1 million over the past decade, while the white population of the state has decreased. Yet these maps are protecting politicians and party systems, and not the new majority of power to elect officials who represent us. That new majority is a combination of the Black community, the Latinx community, the Asian community, and many other communities of color. The Latinx community population has increased by 31%, over 147,000 Latinos, many of them who will be eligible to vote soon. And other communities of color have also contributed to this tremendous growth that we have seen in our state. Yet our voting power is being divided so that we cannot elect candidates that do not only look like us, but actually represent the changing values and culture that the state is seeing. So we ask that you reconsider and build maps that allow Georgians an equal chance to elect candidates that represent our changing values and culture in our state. Our districts do not belong to any party system, but the people of Georgia. So please reconsider giving us maps that actually reflect the growing diversity of our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. All right. Is Leroy Hutchins here yet? Oh, okay. Wonderful, Mr. Hutchins.
Thank you. My name is Leroy Trey Hutchins. I live in Austell and active community member in the area as well. I've been a resident of Cobb County and South Cobb in particular for over 30 years. And I am very active with our schools and the education in our county. One of the things that I want to bring to the table today in regards to the map that I just looked at is that it's important that we have representation that represents the ideals and the ideals of the community. We are an urban metro Atlanta area. We in Cobb County, but we very much look like metro Atlanta. And the ideals that we have are representative of that. Some of the things that we focused on with Six Flags being right there in our back door is tourism, transportation, but the current map, the way it looks, would be more focused on agriculture and more rural opinions versus what we're looking at here in the southern portion of the county. As we're working on with the Cobb County School District, and we're working with our PTAs and our local community groups, we're trying to better our area in regards to representation and having representation that's going to push us forward so that we can thrive. If you look at some of the demographics in the area, even with our schools, 60 to 70% are free and reduced lunch, things of that nature. And so we are a thriving community, and we're going to need representation that mirrors what we're trying to do to move forward. In addition to that, as it relates to the current representative, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, she does not represent those values. What we saw in January was despicable. It's not American. And her opinions of that day do not represent that of the area and our communities. And so we need to make sure that our representation is aligned with where we want to go for the future. We want a safe community for everyone. And currently that is not represented if we move forward in this current way. Lastly, one of the things that I want to mention is that there is a concern with not having our voice heard in South Cobb. If you notice, there's a cityhood movement. So it's not necessarily from every area of our government. And so the community is now awakened. The sleeping dragon is awakened. And we are ready to make sure that we are no longer cast aside and decisions are made to us, instead of made for us. And so we want to be at the table when these decisions are made, and we want to be inclusive in that conversation to make sure that we have the right representation. And right now, this is not the right representation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. Okay, next we have Ron Davis, followed by Mindy Seeger. Is Ron Davis here? Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here and a lot has been said. And my name's Ron Davis. I'm a resident of Austell. I've been a resident of Austell and South Cobb for nearly 30 years, moving here from Southern California. And I was really pleased with what I came across when I came to Georgia. I'm very active in the community. I've been involved in community activism since I was 18, so that's been a while. What I'm concerned about, and I won't repeat all the things that have been said because there have been some great points here that's been made. The problem and the tragedy I see here today is that we're having this conversation about what's going on in 2021. Now, I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, in the midst of the civil rights era, and I saw a lot of things. But I never would have thought that I would be standing here in 2021 talking about partisan fairness. Fairness in voting for people of color. My father was a soldier. I'm the son of a soldier. He fought for this country. He's dead today, but if he were alive to see what was going on right now and to hear this, he's probably turning over in his grave right now. So I'm here just to make an appeal. As Mr. Hutchins just said, Cobb is trying to move forward. And I've been pleased with some of the progress I've seen in Cobb, but we cannot say that we have a functioning democracy and there's a population of people that aren't represented. That is hypocrisy. And I'm not saying, and I'm not trying to get on anybody's case or anything like that. I'm just talking about some common sense, just down to just the morality of it all. Now, I don't know how many of you have children, but think of your children not being able to be represented because some map has been drawn that does not represent them. Being represented by someone who really, I don't know Marjorie Taylor Greene personally or anything like that. I can only go by what I've heard from her. And frankly, I cannot say that she would represent the South Cobb area. Nothing she said has ever given me an impression that she, for lack of a better term, even cares about people of color. I may be wrong, but I have not seen it. So I'm here to make an appeal to everyone right now, just on the basis of the morality of it all. Not just policy, but the morality of it. If people right now in 2020 cannot be represented fairly, then what are we saying as a democracy? And let's not make a mistake. The whole world is watching. What side of history does Cobb County want to be on? So let us really consider what's going on here. And this gentleman talked about the maps and the alternate plans. Let's take those into consideration. Let's talk about being fair, being just, because if we talk about, I pledge allegiance to the flag every Monday at our meetings. And I still have an allegiance to that flag. But what does it say at the end? With liberty and what? Justice for all. So there has to be justice for everyone, not just a few. So Cobb County is more than East Cobb. It is more than West Cobb. It is in totality, all of Cobb combined, the aggregate of every living soul in Cobb County. So let's just Think about what we're doing here, and let's be fair and let's be just. And I'm going to sit down because I'm not an expert.
Thank you very much,
All right,
Mr.
any
Davis. Okay, next we have Mindy Seeger, followed by Vasu Abhiraman.
Hello, my name is Mindy Seeger and I'm a voter in Congressional District 6. And I've seen the versions of the congressional map that drastically changed my congressional district. Bringing Dawson and Forsyth counties wholly into CD6 and taking minority majority precincts from DeKalb out. It changes the district to 63% white. At current, it is at 59.2%. Based on the 2020 election, it also tilts that to plus 26 points for Trump voters from 2020. The CD6 races of the last few elections have garnered national attention. And I'm of the opinion this district should remain competitive. And I've been a part of competing in that district and helping make it the competitive district that it is over those last few cycles. In addition, this map that you see before you splits Cobb County with a population of approximately 780,000 people into 4 congressional districts, more than that of Gwinnett, which has more people in it. That doesn't make sense to me. Over the summer, one of the districts being District 14, Congressional District 14, as we've discussed, of which the voters of Dalton, the community of Dalton, asked over the summer to keep their compact district. We should honor that. They didn't advocate to have the map file southward to Cobb, communities in Austell and Powder Springs. While overall the committee map was graded a C, caucus map B, I would like us to strive for an A. I'm personally not impressed by what we've done overall. This process is no small undertaking. I can appreciate that. However, it is not impossible to draw fair, competitive maps that strive to keep communities of interest, such as those presented to you from the South and West Cobb areas, together, reduce county-city splits, consider VRA legalities, etc. What you have here on a whole could be better. It should be better. In specific, in Congressional District 6, it is ripe for an expensive legal battle that can be prevented by the actions of this committee, and I simply ask you to do better.
Thank you, Ms. Seeger. Next, we have Vasu Abhiraman, who will be followed by Julie Bolin.
Thank you, Chair Rich, and esteemed members of the committee. I wanted to start this off with a quote from the legal scholar Carl Llewellyn. If you took Dan Kunin's contracts class at UGA, you would hear this quote a lot. And the quote is, "Where the reason leads, there goes the rule. Where the reason stops, there stops even the enacted rule." And I believe that the approach to the Voting Rights Act that this committee and its counterpart in the Senate, the Joint Committee, if you will, have taken in this process has seemed to devalue this concept. But I think what would have served the voters of Georgia best is if the committees as policymakers tried to understand the core reason that the Voting Rights Act was passed. There's a nuanced analysis when it comes to legal compliance, and indeed, a discussion just happened in the Senate where we got bogged down in that nuanced analysis. But of course, the Voting Rights Act is about ensuring that communities of color, especially disenfranchised communities, that they have a say, that they aren't drawn out of having a say in the maps as a whole, whether it's 180 House districts, 56 Senate districts, or 14 congressional districts. And with that reason in mind, like let's take out, these nuanced ecological inference and regression and racially polarized voting analysis. When you look at the map that's before you, the main map that's being considered, and you look at the state as a whole and you look at the different regions, do you truly believe that the reason the Voting Rights Act was enacted is being fulfilled? by this map as policymakers again. And I believe that the maps that this committee has advanced don't pass that test, whether or not they pass the legal analysis at the end of all of this. And with that, I yield for any questions.
I don't see any questions. Thank you.
Hmm.
All right. Julie Bolin, who will be followed by Julia Leon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my testimony today. My name is Julie Bolin, and I'm the redistricting chair for the League of Women Voters of Georgia.
Ms. Bolin, I am so sorry to interrupt you. Would you mind just pulling the microphone a little bit closer to
Sure.
you and maybe speaking up just a little?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Is that better?
I
All right.
believe so. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Julie Bolin, redistricting chair for the League of Women Voters of Georgia. The League's mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. The state league and our local chapters have worked diligently over the past 3 years to educate Georgia voters about redistricting and why it's important. Here we are near the end of a long redistricting process. Throughout this process, the league's biggest concern has been the lack of transparency. Georgians want a fair, transparent redistricting process that results in maps that respond to the needs of citizens over those of political parties and politicians. And I think a lot of the complaints you're hearing is because we citizens feel like we haven't been heard, that our needs are not being put over those of political parties and politicians. We're concerned there's been insufficient time for maps to be reviewed and very little information about the methods and criteria you use to draw the maps. Georgians have the right to understand your reasoning in drawing new district lines and how those new district lines serve the interests of the people of Georgia and how they impact the representation of minorities and women. Since you started having hearings over the summer, we and our fellow Georgians have asked repeatedly for fairness, more opportunities for public input, and transparency. But what we got was very little time to review proposed maps. No opportunity to offer alternative maps. You allowed us to provide comments without seeing any maps, but you never let the public ask you questions and get answers about your process and reasoning in drawing district lines. It's true that Democrats gerrymandered state districts in the past. Probably no argument from anybody about that. But the practice is wrong and it undermines our democracy. Continuing this unethical practice is nothing to celebrate. I wish there was as much enthusiasm for representing the interest of all of us who vote and pay taxes in this state. We remain unconvinced that the proposed maps serve the interest of all the citizens of Georgia. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bolin. Next, we have Julia Leon, who will be followed by John Moy. I'm going to have to, I probably should have been asking for people to print their names. I'm having a hard time. All right, you can proceed, Ms. Leon.
Thank you for taking my testimony today. I'm a member of Fair Districts, Georgia, and I commend the statements of our chair, Ken Lawler, earlier. I'm here speaking as a concerned citizen, not as an expert. I'm a citizen of DeKalb County. So while the population is precisely calibrated in the congressional maps to give equal population, the party vote is diluted, even though our parties are about 50-50 Democrat, Republican. A strong democracy depends on the protection of the representation of our population. as Mr. Lawler mentioned, the guidelines of the committee, the process that you followed, says nothing about partisanship. So there are, I just looked at your guidelines. I'm just going to list the topics that are in your guidelines regarding the shape of the map, the design of the map. There's 10 of them: population size, Voting Rights Act, the US Constitution, contiguity, no multi-member districts, the boundaries of counties and precincts, compactness, community of interest, avoid pairing incumbents, and finally, a bit of a catch-all, any other principles the committee deems appropriate. Again, these guidelines were unanimously passed out of committee. I'm disappointed by that. And what I ask for is that the guidelines in our future redistricting are changed to include concerns against gerrymandering, fairness, for partisanship. Alternatively, there is the concept of having a citizens commission, which has the great advantage of relieving the legislators from a conflict of interest. I would also like to note that I think in every legislative session, there has been a bill. I know the latest bills have been called the Democracy Act, that does have parts in it to help improve the process. And it is my hope that in the next legislative session, that bill, when it is introduced again, will at least get a hearing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Leon. And I heard some rumblings from my committee members. I just wanted to clarify that I believe the Senate did unanimously adopt their guidelines, but it was not unanimous in our committee. Not everyone voted for them. Okay. John Moy is our next person to speak, and he will be followed by Cynthia Battles.
Good deal. Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see you, Madam Chairperson, and the members of this committee. Representative Chairperson Rich, just in short, and I know Cindy's going to follow up, and I want to certainly thank Ken and on all the presenters here today. They've really said what really needs to be said, and certainly which will be said. But I just want just to step back. I'm John Moy, the Director of Policy for the Urban League of Greater Atlanta, and to really step back to really advocate for the citizens, our fellow citizens, and the communities of Estelle and Powder Springs. We are certainly deeply concerned about the guidelines. And as we all know on the committee, as members all know, that guidelines for drawing, particularly congressional maps, must include respect for communities of interest. And certainly communities of interest, certainly as you all know, certainly is the recognition and maintenance of geography, social interaction, trade, political ties, and common interest. And I would certainly ask this committee to take another look. We're certainly concerned that the removal of Estelle from the 13th and into the 14th congressional district certainly may not be advantageous for those particular communities there. So I would actually respectfully ask the committee to take another look at that, if you would. And with that, I turn it over to my colleague, Cindy Battles. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Moy. All right. Next, we have Cynthia Battles, followed by David Garcia.
Did I write Cynthia? I must have thought I was in trouble. My name is Cindy Battles, and I am the Director of Policy and Engagement for the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. And just for the record, we're a C3/C4 nonpartisan organization dealing with civil rights issues. I know that John and David are going to testify later and kind of cover some of the points that I was going to make yesterday. So before we ran out of time, I am going to put some questions on the record that I understand will not be answered, but I'd kind of like to have those on the record as well. First of all, we've talked a lot about population and some of the things around drawing these maps, but we really haven't talked about what the consultant said or what they told y'all about how to draw the maps. Since we don't register voters by party, who told y'all which Black and brown voters to move in and out of districts to dilute their voting strength? That's kind of a different question than the racially polarized voting analysis that we were talking about earlier, because federal courts in Georgia have repeatedly acknowledged that racial polarization exists in Georgia as well as other states. If the majority, the Republican Party, is claiming transparency and compliance with the Voting Rights Act, we would love to hear from your consultants. We would love to be able to see the reports that they gave y'all, especially if taxpayers have paid for those, because at that point they become public record. I mean, this is the people's house. We've heard this a whole lot. Like, this is our government. You guys represent us. You are making these decisions for us. So please let us hear the rationale for moving Black and brown voters in and out of districts to make them safer or more competitive for white preferred candidates, and how consultants rationalize doing so, especially if we're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene and hearing from constituents who do not believe that she represents them. Because we're not going to pretend that Marjorie Taylor Greene is your average representative who pretends to represent both sides. One of the questions to ask, or what I'd like to ask, is how you decided to move the minority population from CD 13 in South Cobb into CD 14. Again, who advised this majority party to make that change? And if it was because of the need to have equal population, were there no areas with communities of interest in common with CD 14, which could have been added? Chair Rich, yesterday you mentioned that the mountain area CD 14 was a unique community of interest, but then a minority population in South Cobb County has a unique community of interest, which has virtually nothing in common with the mountain district of CD 14. So why and how was this decision made? Was that something that Professor Brunel suggested? Did Gina Wright make this suggestion? Please let us know. And again, I understand, despite requests for transparency and answers, that these may not be answered, but it is things that the public need to know, especially since some of them are sitting here terrified about what's happening to their district. I yield for any questions.
I don't see any questions. Thank you, Ms. Battles. We have David Garcia next, who will be followed by Salik Suhani.
Good afternoon. I'm David Garcia, and I work for the Galileo Impact Fund, and we advocate for the Hispanic community throughout the state of Georgia. I want to start off by bringing attention to the Georgia Unity Maps, which were previously distributed to the House and Senate redistricting committees, and which were published on the web at georgiaunitymaps.org. And these maps demonstrated that the legislature could have increased the number of congressional districts to more accurately reflect the increasing diversity of the state. The majority party chose not to increase majority minority districts in the new congressional map. Instead, the new congressional map cracks, impacts populations of people of color, dilutes minority voting strength, and racially gerrymanders districts to make it more difficult, if not impossible, for voters of color to elect candidates of choice. Some of the most egregious mapping decisions include Congressional District 6, in which the white percentage of population in the district was increased. The district in the new congressional map goes from about 55% white by 2020 population to over 63% white, with the additions of Cherokee, Forsyth, and Dawson counties. These counties are majority white and have little in common with the communities of interest in the current Congressional District 6 map. This makes it unlikely that voters of color will be able to continue to elect a candidate of choice in this district, such as Black Congresswoman Lucy McBath, who was previously the minority preferred candidate in the district. Congressional Districts 13 and 14, in Congressional Districts 13 and 14, Black voters and other voters of color in Cobb County, including those in the majority minority cities of Marietta and Smyrna, are denied the ability to elect a candidate of their choice in the joint congressional map. The center of the county and the numerous cities along the I-75 corridor are paired with majority white Cherokee, Bartow, and Pickens counties to make a majority white district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Actually, Mr. Garcia, you do have a question. I'm sorry.
I'll try my best to answer.
Chairman Fleming.
Mr. Garcia is referencing something you mentioned. Did any Georgia legislator introduce the Georgia Unity maps you referenced?
From my understanding, no, sir.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay, next we have Salik Sohani, followed by Valerie Test. You know who you are. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Rich and members of the committee. Hope you all are doing well today. My name is Salik Sohani. I am a senior community organizer with Georgia Muslim Voter Project, also known as GAMVP. GAMVP is a nonpartisan organization that elevates the voices of Muslim and immigrant communities and also communities of color. GAMVP serves communities that have been underrepresented in our state for far too long, but our communities are far from being civically apathetic, and we continue to advocate for our fair representation through this redistricting process. And I just wanted to say that I really do appreciate the committee's willingness to schedule additional days for members of the public and our advocacy groups here to share our thoughts on these congressional maps. We really do appreciate it. And we're optimistic that we'll receive more opportunities for public input throughout the rest of this process, as you know, we're having Saturday happen as well. So thank you for that. And also going into 2022. So please keep it up. It's great work. Our communities, however, do have some concerns about these maps. And once again, as I've said on numerous occasions, and as many of my colleagues have said, there's a need for additional transparency. We've asked for an open process, but unfortunately, we have yet to see that. And members of the public hear about committee meetings and times for those meetings less than a day in advance. And I understand that you all have a lot on your schedules. There's, shifting meetings, meetings with different, congressional members and whatnot. But we want to know earlier, right? Because the countless Georgians, across Georgia, we would love to be here. They would love to be here, as my colleagues also, as Representative Thomas echoed, that there are members of Austell who would have loved to be here, but unfortunately they can't, right? It's really tough for our community members to change their work or class schedules, or for our parents in the audience or who are watching, for them to arrange for their children to be picked up or taken to appointments at the last minute when they hear about a committee meeting only a few hours before they are meant to happen. And so I really hope you all take that into consideration going forward and also in 2022 as well. The last time I was here, I brought up the fact that we've only seen these maps and these timings on the General Assembly website and through a few tweets. And unfortunately, nothing's changed. That's just continued. So we would like to see maps and committee schedules shared through more accessible methods. Perhaps the General Assembly can create a newsletter for the public, similar to what many of the advocacy groups here today do as well. And if that doesn't seem feasible to you all, there are certainly other ways to share the information with the public. And I want to reiterate that we want to be involved in this process as much as possible. So please take that into consideration. Now to the map. We've seen Georgia's population grow rapidly in the past decade, and people of color, specifically immigrants, have been a large part of that growth. In particular, Georgia's AAPI population has grown up by over 45% to the tune of 100,000 people. Georgia's African-American population has increased by 22%, or by over 350,000 people. And then, as my friend Giovanni mentioned, our Hispanic population has grown by 31%, or to the tune of over 147,000 people. These congressional maps, they don't accurately represent the diverse populations of Georgia's residents. And we believe that you all can do better. Please, we urge you all to reconsider these maps and ensure that all Georgians are fairly represented. Thank you so much, and I'll yield for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sohani. I don't see any questions.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you. Miss Valerie Testman. Okay.
Thank you so much. I am Valerie Testman. I've been a resident of Austell, Georgia for over 23 years now. Had the pleasure of living in the Cobb community and watching it grow and progress and change and raising my two children. First, I want to thank all these folks behind me that have spoken. They've been very eloquent. I am not here as an expert. I'm here as a resident and a citizen to talk about my personal point of view here. This morning, as I was sitting at the breakfast table with my daughter before she headed out, she's a senior in high school. She's taking econ and government right now. We were talking about this map. And she said, I thought gerrymandering was illegal. I said, well, I guess clearly we see a thin line here in Georgia between gerrymandering and this type of acrobatic redistricting. It unsettled me when I saw who might possibly represent my family, my community, and our interests in South Cobb. Highly impacted me. So I said, hey, let me get in the car and let me go down. So that's why I'm not really scripted, because I have so many things going through my head right now. But what I do know is that my voice will not, and my vote will not come through in the 14th district. In the 13th district, I knew my voice was heard. My vote and my voice can't possibly come through in this deeply red, highly conservative district. And when I look at this proposed map, I look at the small parts of Austell and Lower Powder Springs, which is heavily Democratic. It is heavily Black and brown. And I am totally confused as to how it is proposed to be a part of District 14 with Marjorie Taylor Greene. And when I have watched Marjorie Taylor Greene, I've never met her. We've all seen her express her views regarding racism, anti-Semitism, and being anti-Muslim. I don't know if you all understood the community in that Lower Powder Springs and Austell area that you were placing into that district. You couldn't have understood our community. Otherwise, that map wouldn't look that way. I mean, I get that the map is, and you know, I'm no expert again. I get that the map has to have a certain number of people per district. However, when I look at it, it's clear to me that you could have carved out some of Bartow with the maybe, I don't know, 50 to 100,000 people that you carved out in Cobb County. You could have carved them out of Bartow. So what I would like this committee to do is to understand that my voice, my family's voice, my community, and the Powder Springs and Austell community, our voices and our votes matter. They will not matter if we are entrenched within District 14. So, there are some other issues I see with the map, but you know, everyone else has done such a great job at sharing that. But I wanted to put a personal spin on it. So I would ask that you all go back and look at that part of the map and other parts as well, because I certainly do not want my voice to be stifled with this map. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a question? Okay, there is one question, Ms. Testman. I'm sorry. Chairman Zetzler.
First of all, thank you for being here. I so appreciate it. And I tell people back in my district that most folks don't realize you can come down here and be heard.
Right.
I mean, and I know it's not easy to come down here on short notice. Let me just above all say thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
If you had to sort of think through your concerns about the map that's presented, how much of it is the map, the fact that you were districted in with South Paulding County? And how much is it about the specific representative that you're not? I mean,
it's both.
Because I'm not trying to trivialize it, but I do want to divide that in my own thinking.
Well, honestly, it's both, because you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, is very unsettling for me to believe. I don't believe she can represent me and my interests and those interests of my community. First off, that is very unsettling. But also, when I look at the map in and of itself, I don't understand how we've broken up Cobb into four different ways and 4 different districts. That is unsettling as well. And, you know, I guess it's to gain a bigger issue, but they both absolutely concern me, because the community, even if it was not Marjorie Taylor Greene, to be honest with you, that's that's still not a community or a district. That is not representative of the Austell and Powder Springs area. It is not representative. You look at the number of Black and brown people and non-whites in that community, and then you also look at the highly Democratic folks in that community. I'm not really clear how that came to be.
Would you be, if you don't mind asking, you don't have to answer any of these questions.
I don't mind.
Would you be comfortable if, let's say, let's take the partisanship out of it. If it were, I finished high school in South Carolina. I represented Tim Scott's United States Senator from South Carolina. He was formerly a congressman before he was a United States Senator. If Representative Republican, if an African-American Republican, perhaps like Tim Scott or someone else, were in this district and were drawn in to represent you, would you feel good about that? Or is your big concern really one of having perhaps a Republican representative?
That's not my issue. That's not my primary issue, because I voted on both sides of the table. Okay. Let me say that. Okay. I mean, I don't necessarily vote party. I vote with my interests.
Okay. Okay.
I definitely vote with my interests. So, you know, I mean, I don't want to say whether I would have voted for him or not.
I use him just as an example, but
I do not vote specifically party. This is not strictly a party issue completely for me. There are multiple factors at play here. Party is one of them. Mm-hmm. You know, my representation and who represents me is very important to me.
And I asked the question just for clarity, because we're getting a lot of feedback from folks there, and I know there's some emotion around it.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not clear.
But it's a fair question. I want to divide the question. I served down here. I'll gladly have a conversation with you and give my opinion. But just to be clear, you know, there's a lot at play with this map. Because I served a number of years down here with a gentleman, Representative Melvin Everson, great representative, former mayor pro tem of Snellville, served in this body for a number of years, ran statewide. African-American, rags to riches story, incredible American, a great story, great friend of mine. If he were the United States Congressman in the 14th district and it was drawn this way,
I don't know him, so I can't comment. I
asked the question for everybody, and I so appreciate you being here. I just wanted to maybe ask. There's a lot of passion about the current representative, but if there were another Republican representative that maybe were more likable, or is it a partisan question for you? I just wanted to really understand the nature of it. If it's about Miss Taylor Greene, then I am hearing that, but I want to kind of divide the issue.
It's not just Miss Taylor Greene. Yeah, it is not just her. Yeah, look at our community, the Powder Spring and Austell area. Let's take a look at that community. And then let's look at whether or not our interests are going to be served well within that district by whomever that representative is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have another question, Ms. Testman. This is Representative Scott.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I would just like to say thank you for your comments. That's basically it. Just thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you all so much. That concludes the list of speakers who had signed up. And I just want to thank you all. I feel like today was very productive, and I appreciate the fact and policy-based testimony that you all gave. I also commend you for coming down here and speaking. Not enough people are engaged in our civic process. And I think that it would be wonderful if more people did know that they needed to follow the legislature and the committees. So I spread the word, and hopefully and surely you all will as well. Remember that we have another committee meeting on Saturday at 9 a.m. and it will be virtual. There will be a way to sign up virtually for that committee meeting. Just go to our website and you will be able to see the link to click there. Thank you all very much. And with that, we are adjourned.